everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Chrysalis on the Couch today. So my name is Jude Mason and I'm a Year 2 and Year 3 tutor in Nottingham. And I also have my own private practice. And our topic today is going to be changing seasons and how that affects us, how that affects our mental health and so on. So joining me today, I have Reuben Turkey and Alison Watson. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves properly now. So we'll start with you, Reuben.
Hello everyone, my name is Reuben. I am a Year 2 tutor, recently enrolled with Chrysalis to fulfill that role. I'm very excited about it. I'm also a person-centered psychotherapeutic counsellor based in Stroud with a private practice and also do hypnotherapy. That's
fantastic. Me. Thank you. And Alison.
Hi, so I studied 3 years with Chrysalis and I'm qualified at level 5 earlier this year. And since then, I've started to set up in private practice, and I also work with my original placement organisation and a couple of other employer assistance programmes.
So you're busy?
Yeah.
We're all busy. It sounds like we're all really, really busy.
Which is good, yeah.
Yeah, which is good, I guess. Yeah, it's always better to be busy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, as I say, our topic today is changing seasons, and we're just kind of, well, I kind of feel like we're just on the cusp of winter now, aren't we? It's well into autumn. Everyone's talking about Christmas, which doesn't even feel like it's too early anymore, does it? Because it's next month. But what we're going to talk about today really is how the changing seasons affect us, affect our mental health, and so on. So who'd like to start this conversation rolling today?
I'm quite happy to start.
Okay. Okay.
So I think probably we all kind of like different parts of the year better than others. For me, I was born on Christmas Day, so I only have Christmas Day. Yeah, so I only have Christmas. No presents are expected. I only have that one day a year, and therefore I think as a child I used to get really excited about Christmas because, you know, but then I had to share it with everybody else. But then there's nothing else. So I found really after Christmas that was a real slump, and I think that stayed so that, you know, I find January and February just not nice months. But I think there is a difference, isn't there, between actually thinking, oh, I don't really like January and February because it's really dark. You know, you've tended to have to spend a lot at Christmas, so you've got all the bills from Christmas coming into January. So it just feels a bit like, yeah. But I think there is a difference between feeling like that and actually impacting on your day-to-day lives. And I think that's when it's actually probably classed as depression and obviously sad, rather than just feeling a bit down, I guess. But you can understand it because you can understand how you feel yourself, really.
Yeah, it does feel like it's on a bit of a spectrum, doesn't it? I mean, yes. I was born on the 3rd of January, so for me, in terms of that kind of, I love Christmas. I'm excited about Christmas this year. I'm always excited about Christmas.
Yeah.
But for me, that kind of dip after the Christmas season, it was okay because I still got something to look forward to. But I know what you mean about those special days for you. That's personal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we can all relate.
Different, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all relate to that. The kind of elation and joy that we have at Christmas, the reunion of families, hopefully the kind of love and warmth, and, you know, surrounding around a fire, and the whole festive experience lifts us all. We're almost obliged to feel happy over Christmas, although of course many people,
not for everybody, of course.
Well,
yeah.
And then it's kind of anticlimactic, isn't it? When January it's cold, it's particularly cold in January, February, and those kind of dark mornings and later or earlier afternoons of kind of that similar somber experience that I think the light can have on us, just generally. So yeah, I think a lot of people can identify with that. Although it's interesting hearing you both speak around your birthdays being at that time of the year, because it's actually come up with my son and I. He's always loved winter, and he's end of October, 30th of October. and I'm May, and my wife's February. My youngest daughter's in July, and we definitely have a kind of innate leaning towards myself and Olivia being more summer babies, really embracing winter. So I wonder if you're kind of preconditioned maybe at birth, you know, the point at which you enter the world has a bearing on how you appreciate that season of the year. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I would say that my favorite season is summer, but I do still love Christmas, and we've focused on Christmas. I think January and February do feel like very sort of down months for a lot of people. Certainly for me, because they seem to last so long, don't they?
And there's nothing to look forward to really in them, is there?
Yeah, they seem to last so long. But I was talking to someone recently about autumn. Now, I think lots of people feel like, I quite like autumn. I like the colours. I think I've got an autumnal picture behind me actually over there. I love the colours. I love the idea of crunching through leaves. But that isn't always what the reality is it? That's the ideal.
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone recently who absolutely loves summer like me, and she said, oh, actually, it feels like the death of summer. And you know, and she said she couldn't see it in anything other than a really negative way. And certainly when the clocks change, you're getting up in the morning in the dark, you may be coming, if you don't work from home, you're coming home in the dark, and it just feels a bit gloomy for a lot. I know some people love it and love that coziness, but it feels quite gloomy for a lot of people, and the light really affects some people's mental health, doesn't it, in a more significant way than, you know, like we've been saying, we prefer that. It does really affect people's mental health in a very significant way, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also I think the thing about autumn, Jude, is that it's in a similar way to spring, it's kind of transitional. If you have a connection with nature, you see that wonderful spectrum of colour you're talking about change gradually, and then with spring there's a rebirth and blossoming and things flourishing, and it feels like sort of new life and new growth. Whereas winter, once the leaves are gone, everything
sort of dies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It dies.
I had a client who had lost a baby, not at birth, but a young baby around autumn, and she's in her 70s now, so this was over 40 years ago, and still, although she's had bereavement counselling and you know, processed it, she can't celebrate autumn in the same way her daughter does, who loves exactly what you know, throwing leaves. Still as an adult, she'll sort of revert to child and throw leaves in the air and be joyful. But for this mother, she couldn't get beyond the fact that she almost felt she had to feel the death of her baby. And one of the things we worked on in therapy was trying to sort of reframe that a bit for her and move her on, because it meant that every year there was this emotional upheaval, block, you know, stopping her from feeling anything other than mourning, I suppose. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, you know, a lot of people are going to have periods that you know, they remember as being when someone's died or some other loss has occurred, and that will kind of, that anniversary will always kind of trigger sadness, and you know, it can feel quite a difficult period, I guess. So yeah, I think that's, you know, probably common to many.
I think as well, Christmas can. I mean, I work with quite a few clients who have not had that. You know, you talked about coming together with families, and if you have a loving family, that's fantastic, isn't it? You know, I think we're probably going to really appreciate that this year, aren't we? Because last year was a little bit different. Certainly last year I didn't get to see my son and his girlfriend on Christmas Day. We had a lovely sort of meeting and had a walk somewhere after Christmas, but it felt really different for me last year. So this year it's going to be complete, you know, it's completely different again, so much more positive. But for people who haven't got those family connections, or have had, have had a really difficult childhood or a difficult relationship with family members now, Christmas is just, well, the Christmas adverts have already started, haven't they? The Christmas adverts where you see all these idyllically happy families opening their presents, and having a meal together. And even for the nicest, most wonderful, most loving families, that's not necessarily the case, is it? So for people who don't have that, it must be so difficult to watch that, to watch that festive ideal sort of thrust in your face every time you turn the TV on. I think it must be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think, and obviously seasonal affective disorder is a depression, isn't it? And I think, people who suffer from it do describe it as that sort of black cloud that comes over them. And typically, I mean, not always, because I didn't realise that actually there are people who actually get that same in summer. I presumed it was normally always in the winter months, and it was related to the changing light levels, the whole kind of winter dying, as you say. But apparently some people do suffer from it in the summer. But it is depression, and I think when it starts to affect your day-to-day behavior, impacts on relationships, etc., then it is significant. But I guess again, it's like depression generally, that people can feel, I just feel a bit low, and people will try to be cheered up out of it, and it can probably be quite difficult to actually diagnose it as a condition, other than if you perhaps start to take notes of, or record it, keep a journal, something like that every year, and sort of find when you do have that dip, and then perhaps relate it to the seasons and think perhaps it is. And I don't know how easy it is for GPs to kind of help people who are suffering from depression at particular parts of the year, I guess.
Well, we all know that some GPs are more kind of up on mental health than others,
Yeah.
Sorry, Reuben, what were you going to say?
Just really paraphrasing what Alison's already said, that as you're alluding to, I think there's different degrees of depression, and as we're all saying, we all encounter some degree of feeling low, perhaps in the winter months. Very interesting to hear the summer stuff. I hadn't realized that either. No. And I guess if you have a leaning towards depression or have had depression, you might be more prone to being affected by the seasons. But the other thing I wanted to just briefly say, going back to what you were talking about, Judith, is actually my mum immigrated to Australia when I was 16, and she'd spent large periods of time there throughout my childhood. So Christmas is kind of a bit bittersweet for me, because there were several Christmases when mum wasn't there. Most of my Christmases, in fact. And also, of course, in Australia, it's summer.
The other way around, yeah.
On the beach.
Totally confusing.
Throw a few shrimps on the barbie, mate. It's totally different. That is what happens. They all flock to the beaches, and so you kind of, depending where you are in the world, I guess, seasons in terms of the festive period and seasons change with the weather and where you are in the globe. So that's another kind of interesting.
I'd quite like Christmas on the beach. The only time we've had Christmas on the beach was when we once went to Cornwall for Christmas. We didn't have Christmas on the beach, but we had a flask of mulled wine and a mince pie on the beach, and then went in because it was so cold. But I think one of the things that, when we're talking about seasons that we like or don't like and actual depression, I think one of the issues that people use the word depression in regular language, don't they, in regular parlance, and that can be an issue, can't it? Because so many people will say, I feel depressed today, or I find winter depressing, and I think we all do it, even if when we try not to. But it does mean that when two people say, I feel depressed in winter, it can mean so many different things. It can mean I just don't like winter. I don't like the dark nights, the early mornings, or it can mean I'm seriously depressed in winter. And that's one of the problems, I think, that we have with the use of language, because people don't use it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, just going back to what Reuben was saying, in that, I think there's been some sort of investigation saying that where you live in a country where there is different seasons and quite dramatic seasons, changes of, light levels and, temperature changes, then that's where people tend to suffer seasonal affective disorder. Whereas if you live in a place where there's not a lot of changes between the winter and the summer, that's less likely, because you've got that constant light level. So that perhaps does kind of give evidence towards it being connected to light levels and lower, less light in the winter months, maybe.
Well, people have the light lamps, don't they?
Absolutely.
And when you were saying about different countries, my brother used to live in Norway, not too far outside the Arctic Circle, and where they lived in the winter, it was pretty much dark all the time.
Yeah.
They only had a couple of hours of sunlight every day.
Yeah.
I mean, he lived there for about 4 years, and he never really talked about that affecting him particularly, but obviously it's going to affect some people, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would find that very difficult personally, myself.
They have a higher rate of
suicides. Yes, I think, I'd read that as well. Yeah.
I guess that just shows how extreme sort of light deprivation, how much we need vitamin D and sunshine, and I think I would find it really oppressive, actually. I'm sure I'd cope, but I wouldn't enjoy that at all.
No, I don't know. I don't think, I mean, it's a lovely place that they lived, but I don't think I would enjoy that. I think one of the things is, though, that because it's cold as well, it puts people off going out, and actually that lack of that's what you need to do, really, isn't it? To kind of overcome some of these issues, is to get as much natural light as you can and actually get out there in the winter sunshine. And I don't know about where you guys are, but it's actually, it doesn't look great at the moment, but I've literally just got in just before we started recording this, and it was really quite nice and bright and sunny, but cold. That doesn't put me off going out. The rain puts me off going out. I'm a bit fair weathered when it comes to rain. But I think the cold will put lots of people off perhaps doing the things that would be positive for their mental health in the winter.
I think some people kind of, when they're suffering from depression, seasonal affective disorder, I think they talk about almost feeling like they want to hibernate. So kind of they want to sort of stay in bed, pull the covers over there. And I think that's when they start to pull away from social contacts, or the kind of the classic symptoms of depression generally is almost like hibernation mode, and wanting to pull away from interactions and going outside, doing exercise. And yet those are the very things that might help kind of lift the mood. But when you're feeling like miserable, it can feel like you just want to hibernate, especially when it's dark and cold. You just want to sort of stay inside. But as you say, trying to push yourself, if possible, to do a bit of exercise, to go out in the fresh air, to keep in contact with people, I think are all the things that probably will help lift the mood slightly.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when when the COVID pandemic first hit, it was sort of in I can remember it sort of March or something. March 2020. Last year. And the weather was glorious, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
It was absolutely glorious. Beautiful. And it didn't feel, it didn't, obviously what was going on in the world was awful, but it didn't feel on a day-to-day level, but it was so bad because...
You could get out. You could get outside, couldn't you, really, still?
Do your one walk a day. whatever it was, you one bit of exercise a day. Or if if you've got a garden, I know not everyone has a garden, but I'm lucky enough to have a small garden, to sit out. And because it was spring as well, even without the COVID thing, but because it was spring, it just, for me,
felt a lot.
It's hopeful.
Yeah.
COVID, notwithstanding, but just generally spring feels hopeful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you see the first daffodils in the shops or on the grass verges, or daffodils to me are just a hopeful flower.
Yeah,
absolutely. And what you were saying earlier, Alison, about getting out and doing exercise obviously releases endorphins, and such a good way of countering that thing of becoming really lethargic and just going in and wrapping up in a duvet, which again, the temptation to do that in winter. But it made me think of, I jog, and fortunate enough to live in an area of outstanding beauty, but I used to go up to the common in the snow and run, and just the bitter cold. I mean, it was Arctic, literally sort of biting against my face. And of course, once you're up there, you've got to carry on. If you stop and start walking, you're gonna get even colder. But then the adverse, and we were just starting to talk about spring, so I'm aware we should come back to that a bit, but is in summer, if it's too hot, it can have the opposite. People, particularly British people, can go, oh no, I just want to be inside, it's too hot out there.
And I think that's what starts off the seasonal affective disorder for people that don't like summer, because it's too hot, and it's it affects them in other ways, really. So it
really can affect some people. That find it again sort of oppressive, the heat. I mean, I'm a sun worshipper, so I'll lap up as many rays.
But don't you think as well, though? I mean, maybe it's just, I'm sure it's not just British people, it's just people, isn't it? It's too cold, it's too dark, it's too bright, it's too hot, and...
Well, it's our main source of a conversation, isn't it? If you run out of things to say to people, you're going, oh, the weather's been a bit bad today, isn't it? So, I mean, it's our go-to conversation starter, really, isn't it?
It is, really. Yeah, it kind of it's giving us something to talk about, isn't it? But yeah, it does. I mean, we do seem to be a little bit focused on it, and it's like we have one day of really hot weather, and suddenly people are saying there's going to be a hosepipe ban. It's. I'm kind of like, let's just enjoy it, because we might not get much of it, or if there's it's a heat wave, if we have like 3 days of hot weather or something.
But also people gauge their mood, often that's an icebreaker, isn't it? Oh, how are you? Oh, I'm all right, but this blooming rain, it's really getting me down. And it's almost like we use that as a gateway, as a way to kind of tell someone how we're feeling. The weather can be a sort of
maybe it's an easier way of saying, actually, I'm feeling really low. Or, I think we use these words, don't we? And half the time, like you say, that they've got a different meaning, haven't they? I was talking to somebody the other day, they were saying, when someone asks how you are, they often don't mean it. And we were saying that I mean, hopefully, lots of people do, but sometimes people will use the "how are you" as hello. And if you make the mistake of actually sort of answering, taking that on face value and answering them, actually they're halfway up the street, because they didn't really mean to say "how are you," or they didn't mean to elicit a response. They meant to say hello. But it was kind of, I don't know, is it a more socially acceptable way? I don't know. Is it a nicer way to do it? It doesn't feel very nice when you're actually telling somebody and they've disappeared around the corner. But I guess the weather's a similar thing, isn't it? It's easier to say, like you say, oh, this weather's it's
gloomy. I think that's sort of gloomy is a good kind of word that would sum up kind of both the mood of a person and the weather kind of thing. So my husband loves what I would consider gloomy. He's like, oh, it's great, it's getting darker. Cozy. We can have the Fire on.
We've got a wood burner and it is cozy. We can have the fire on. We can close the curtains at 5:30. We can, and I'm kind of like, oh, where's the summer?
Yeah. and I wonder whether it's got worse for people since the whole COVID lockdown, because I'm just like you were sort of saying, when the first lockdown in March 2020 happened, it was really nice weather and you could get out a bit, and as you say, it was the start of spring, so you felt positive. When we had the second lockdown, I think that was kind of November time, and obviously I think then there was a feeling about, oh God, we're going into winter and we're going to have to sort of stop having the interactions we've started to like again in the summertime. And then obviously it was like, oh, and Christmas is cancelled because you can only, meet so many people. And I wonder whether that kind of just accelerated a lot of anxiety and depression for people in terms of exacerbating what winter meant in being, quite a lonely period.
Definitely.
So it will be interesting to see whether a lot more people sort of suffer from it in future winters, and we're just starting one now. So
yeah, and in that sense, it's like we're predicting how we're going to feel based on the weather.
Yeah.
Rather than using weather as a way to reflect how we're feeling, before it's happened. And I guess that becomes a repeated thing as well. If you know that you generally have an inclination towards feeling down in the winter, you're anticipating feeling that way in the autumn.
Yes.
Or if you know that, like going back to the thing about, oh, it's really bright, it's really lovely and hot out there, and I have a default response to that, which is, oh, it lifts all our spirits. But of course, what we've realized from today is maybe it doesn't lift everyone's spirits, in fact. But I don't know, there's also this thing in sort of late spring, early summer where everyone seems more energized and sort of generally active. Some people even talk about affecting their libido, for example, and that definitely has an adverse effect in the winter, I would think, for a lot of people. Except if you're like, I don't know, if you're in somewhere like the image behind me and you're skiing,
that looks lovely.
Then you're sort of really embracing these gorgeous surroundings. And I did want to mention that because you were coming towards that as well, Judith, the thing of like where we live. I was born and raised in Southeast London, and if you're in a big city or just a city and it's cold and gloomy, I think that has a more that could impact you more than if you're somewhere in the country, just because of the very nature of cities being sort of claustrophobic and confined anywhere, not being able to get out and sort of really feel that you're liberated and free because you're penned in. And then there's this rain or sleet or
the greyness of the buildings, I guess.
Although that said, sometimes if there's a storm, I find a storm really energizing. I've been going to my garden and just sort of swirl around in this big powerful sort of weather. So yeah,
I guess what this conversation shows is that we are all different, aren't we? And although I love the hot weather, we usually go away after Christmas, and it's usually to somewhere quite cold, because most places are well, we didn't last year because because of COVID, but I'm hoping to this year. For me though, that's more about Christmas is over, and I've been like literally on a high about Christmas since about September because I love Christmas. So Christmas is over, and then I like to go be somewhere else for my birthday or around my birthday, and it's that kind of Christmas is over. My birthday isn't potentially as exciting as it used to be, when I was 10 or something, and so I like to, because I do feel a bit deflated after Christmas. So I like to have, as soon as Christmas is over, I think, oh, well, we're going to, I don't know, like Amsterdam or somewhere like that after Christmas, just for a few days, just to
lift the mood.
Keep on a high, keep on a high.
And I think actually there was a trend, and I presume it won't have been over the last 2 years, but certainly, you know, retired people used to go away and probably spend January, February, March, you know, Tenerife places where they could get sunshine. And I'm sure part of that was to sort of lift moods during the dark months, you know, if you could get away, really. And I suppose, again, that's another thing, isn't it, that we haven't been able to, you know, because last year we weren't able to go to the sunshine places we could go to because, you know, travel was very limited, and perhaps that also affected people, that they weren't getting their sort of fix of some sunshine in the winter months that perhaps did help to lift their moods. So,
and yet snowy places like the one in your picture, you know, if it feels to me personally, it's the dismal in between that's not so great for my mood, certainly. And I don't, you know, assume that everyone else is the same as me, because actually places like, I don't know, if you went to Lapland or something, that feels magical, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Or ski. I mean, I'm not a skier, but I imagine that environment is quite a magical environment in the snow. Are you a skier, Reuben? Are you?
I've been for years, but I have been throughout my life. Yeah. But you get that kind of crisp alpine
brightness still. Yeah.
Right, uplifting in itself, even when it's cold. But as you were saying, and I wonder, obviously a lot of this was affected by COVID, but there was a kind of collective, you know, across all of society, a kind of collective downness that also sometimes meant that we would when we did step out for our walks and saw our neighbours, one of the first things you might say is, "Oh, isn't it glorious out?" And really, what we were saying is, "Isn't it glorious to be out?"
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing of using weather to somehow disguise or communicate what we're trying to actually say.
Yeah, because we're not very good at saying that, are we? I have to say, this conversation's made me want to get out in my garden and have a cup of tea in my garden, even if I mean, I remember having some friends over in the garden when it was more acceptable, you know, when it was only acceptable to have people in the garden. And it was really cold, and it was actually really nice. We just got blankets, coats, went in at one stage and got some gloves, but actually it was really quite pleasant. And seeing my son last Christmas, we literally met at Cromford in Derbyshire, went for a walk, did our Christmas. We found a picnic bench, exchanged presents. And we were freezing. We were absolutely freezing, but we still had fun, you know. So this idea that Christmas is ever cancelled, it's never really cancelled, is it? There's for not if you're, you know, if people are abroad and you can't, or people aren't close enough that you can meet halfway. You know, I understand that not everyone has that, but there's often a way around things, isn't there?
But that kind of, just the last 2 or 3 conversations have all been about the things that do lift moods. So, you know, going on holiday with the sunshine, going skiing is exercise, or actually just getting together with friends, again, are all things that kind of can lift moods when they have got, you know, depressed, really. So
well, the problem is when people are seriously depressed, you don't want to do any of those things, do you? You just get into that kind of almost that really negative cycle, don't you? And
sometimes and sometimes, you know, going to GP, explaining it, and perhaps even getting antidepressants, even if it's just for part of this, you know, the year, really. I think possibly, you know, it has to be explored. It's whatever works for the particular individual concerned, isn't it?
Definitely.
I think another antidote, though, can include weather, actually. So if I offer a walk and talk service.
Me too.
I do. And
Yeah.
sometimes connecting with nature, which of course is a lot to do with the seasons, can have a really powerful impact on breaking through something for someone, you know, that something resonates in nature with them, and that unlocks a part of them that they're struggling with and trying to work through. So if we look at it that way, suddenly it can have a really significantly powerful effect on change for us as individuals. I think that's worth mentioning as well.
Well, I think that whole gardening, and we've just mentioning, Jude was sort of saying about, you know, going out and enjoying being in the garden. And I think, again, lockdown, I think, had a real turnabout in that people started to actually want to buy houses with gardens. You know, they've gone from sort of flats and really, really, you know, that's the best way forward. And suddenly it was like, oh, but we really miss being able to get outside. And if we can get out in our own garden, how great is that, kind of thing? And I think there has been
stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I've grown one butternut squash this year. Huge,
did you eat it?
Huge plant.
Yeah, but just a little
one butternut. I am so proud. I haven't eaten it yet. I'm so proud of it. That one butternut squash.
Sorry? Courgettes. Do you ever grow courgettes?
I've grown courgettes, yeah.
Yeah. I remember I've got an allotment and I've had one for about 4 years. And the first year, a mate of mine, local mate, said, "Oh," he gave me some seedlings, you know, and he said, "Oh, only plant one, because otherwise you'll be feeding your entire estate." And sure enough, I had, by the time they were coming up, 12 would come. You'd pick one, another would come.
Yeah, better than my butternut squash then.
Yeah.
I've done beans as well, and you get so many. Yeah, you get so many beans, and I'm great at growing green beans. I mean, I don't think there's any kind of green figureness about it. I think they're just easy to grow. But I've got a freezer full of green beans.
Maybe you should just farm your squash and keep it as a trophy somewhere in the house.
Next time I do one of these, I'm going to have it on a in a photo frame or something. Yeah. Well, it's been great. It's been great talking to you. I mean, I think the main points of this is that we're all different, and maybe we should all just get out and sort of enjoy whatever weather. I mean, there's that quote, isn't there, that there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just bad clothing.
Yes,
so,
indeed.
So, you know,
so
maybe
wrap up and get outside.
Embrace that. Yeah, I think I'm going to go and get a cup of tea and go and sit outside for 5 minutes. So it's been lovely talking to you.
Thanks, Jude. Yeah.
Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. Bye-bye.